Book 3, Chapter 1 of Hard Times, by Charles Dickens. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Hard Times, by Charles Dickens. Book 3, Garnering. Chapter 1 Another Thing Needful. Louisa awoke from a torpor, and her eyes languidly opened on her old bed at home, and her old room. It seemed at first as if all that had happened since the days when these objects were familiar to her were the shadows of a dream; but gradually, as the objects became more real to her sight, the events became more real to her mind. She could scarcely move her head for pain and heaviness. Her eyes were strained and sore, and she was very weak. A curious passive inattention had such possession of her, that presence of her little sister in the room did not attract her notice for some time. Even when their eyes had met, and her sister had approached the bed, Louisa lay for minutes looking at her in silence, and suffering her timidly to hold her passive hand, before she asked,
"When was I brought to this room?"
"Last night, Louisa."
"Who brought me here?"
"Sissy, I believe."
"Why do you believe so?"
"Because I found her here this morning. She didn't come to my bedside to wake me as she always does, and I went to look for her. She was not in her own room either, and I went looking for her all over the house, until I found her here taking care of you and cooling your head. Will you see father? Sissy said I was to tell him when you woke."
"What a beaming face you have, Jane,"
said Louisa, as her young sister, timidly still, bent down to kiss her.
"Have I? I'm very glad you think so. I am sure it must be Sissy's doing."
The arm Louisa had begun to twine around her neck unbent itself.
"You can tell father if you will."
Then, staying her for a moment, she said,
"It was you who made my room so cheerful, and gave it this look of welcome."
"Oh no, Louisa, it was done before I came. It was—"
Louisa turned upon her pillow, and heard no more. When her sister had withdrawn, she turned her head back again, and lay with her face towards the door, until it opened, and her father entered. He had a jaded, anxious look upon him, and his hand, usually steady, trembled in hers. He sat down at the side of the bed, tenderly asking how she was, and dwelling on the necessity of her keeping very quiet after her agitation and exposure to the weather last night. He spoke in a subdued and troubled voice, very different from his usual dictatorial manner, and was often at a loss for words.
"My dear Louisa, my poor daughter!"
He was so much at a loss at that place that he stopped altogether. He tried again.
"My unfortunate child!"
The place was so difficult to get over that he tried again.
"It would be hopeless for me, Louisa, to endeavor to tell you how overwhelmed I have been, and still am, by what broke upon me last night. The ground on which I stand has ceased to be solid under my feet. The only support on which I leaned, and the strength of which it seemed, and still does seem, impossible to question, has given way in an instant. I am stunned by these discoveries. I have no selfish meaning in what I say, but I find the shock of what broke upon me last night to be very heavy indeed."
She could give him no comfort herein. She had suffered the wreck of her whole life upon the rock.
"I will not say, Louisa, that if you had by any happy chance undeceived me some time ago, it would have been better for us both, better for your peace and better for mine. For I am sensible that it may not have been a part of my system to invite any confidence of that kind. I had proved my system to myself, and I have rigidly administered it, and I must bear the responsibility of its failures. I only entreat you to believe, my favorite child, that I have meant to do right."
He said it earnestly, and to do him justice, he had. In gauging fathomless deeps with his little mean excise rod, and in staggering over the universe with his rusty stiff-legged compasses, he had meant to do great things. Within the limits of his short tether he had tumbled about, annihilating the flowers of existence with greater singleness of purpose than many of the blatant personages whose company he kept.
I am well assured of what you say, father. I know I have been your favourite child. I know you have intended to make me happy. I have never blamed you, and I never shall.
He took her outstretched hand and retained it in his.
My dear, I have remained all night at my table, pondering again and again on what has so painfully passed between us. When I consider your character, when I consider that what has been known to me for hours has been concealed by you for years, when I consider under what immediate pressure it has been forced from you at last, I come to the conclusion that I cannot but mistrust myself.
He might have added more than all, when he saw the face now looking at him. He did add it in effect, perhaps, as he softly moved her scattered hair from her forehead with his hand. Such little actions, slight in another man, were very noticeable in him, and his daughter received them as if they had been words of contrition.
But,
said Mr. Gradgrind, slowly, and with hesitation, as well as with a wretched sense of happiness,
if I see reason to mistrust myself for the past, Louisa, I should also mistrust myself for the present and the future. To speak unreservedly to you, I do. I am far from feeling convinced now, however differently I might have felt only this time yesterday, that I am fit for the trust you repose in me, that I know how to respond to the appeal you have come home to make to me, that I have the right instinct, supposing it for the moment to be some quality of that nature, how to help you and to set you right, my child.
She had turned upon her pillow, and lay her face upon her arm so that he could not see it. All her wildness and passion had subsided, but, though softened, she was not in tears. Her father was changed in nothing so much as in the respect that he would have been glad to see in her tears.
Some persons hold,
he pursued, still hesitating,
that there is a wisdom of the head, and that there is a wisdom of the heart. I have not supposed so, but, as I have said, I mistrust myself now. I have supposed the head to be all-sufficient. It may not be all-sufficient. How can I venture this morning to say that it is? If that other kind of wisdom should be what I have neglected, and should be the instinct that is wanted, Louisa.
He suggested it very doubtfully, as if he were half unwilling to admit it even now. She made him no answer, lying before him on her bed, still half dressed, much as he had seen her lying on the floor of his room last night.
Louisa.
And his hand rested on her hair again.
I have been absent from here, my dear, a good deal of late, and though your sister's training has been pursued according to the system.
He appeared to come to that word with great reluctance always.
It has necessarily been modified by daily associations begun, in her case, at an early age. I ask you, ignorantly and humbly, my daughter, for the better, do you think?
Father,
she replied, without stirring,
if any harmony has been awakened in her young breast that was mute in mine until it turned to discord, let her thank heaven for it, and go upon her happier way, taking it as her greatest blessing that she has avoided my way.
Oh, my child,
he said, in a forlorn manner,
I am an unhappy man to see you thus. What avails it to me that you do not reproach me, if I so bitterly reproach myself?
He bent his head and spoke low to her.
Louisa, I have a misgiving that some change may have been slowly working out about me in this house, by mere love and gratitude, that what the head had left undone and could not do, the heart may have been doing silently. Can it be so?
She made him no reply.
I am not too proud to believe it, Louisa. How could I be arrogant, and you before me? Can it be so? Is it so, my dear?
He looked upon her once more, lying cast away there, and without another word went out of the room. He had not been long gone when she heard a light tread near the door, and knew that some one stood beside her. She did not raise her head. A dull anger that she should be seen in her distress, and that the involuntary look she had so resented should come to this fulfilment, smouldered within her like an unwholesome fire. All closely imprisoned forces rend and destroy. The air that would be healthful to the earth, the water that would enrich it, the heat that would ripen it, tear it when caged up. So in her bosom even now, the strongest qualities she possessed, long turned upon themselves, became a heap of obduracy that rose against a friend. It was well that soft touch came upon her neck, and that she understood herself to be supposed to have fallen asleep. The sympathetic hand did not claim her resentment. Let it lie there. Let it lie. It lay there, warming into life a crowd of gentler thoughts, and she rested. As she softened with the quiet, and the consciousness of being so watched, some tears made their way into her eyes. The face touched hers, and she knew that there were tears upon it too, and she the cause of them. As Louisa feigned to rouse herself and sat up, Sissy retired, so that she stood placidly near the bedside.
I hope I have not disturbed you. I've come to ask if you would let me stay with you.
Why should you stay with me? My sister will miss you. You are everything to her.
Am I?
Returned Sissy, shaking her head.
I would be something to you, if I might.
What?
Said Louisa, almost sternly.
Whatever you want most, if I could be that. I would like to try to be as near it as I can, and however far off that may be, I will never tire of trying. Will you let me?
My father sent you to ask me.
No, indeed,
replied Sissy.
He told me that I might come in now, but he sent me away from the room this morning, or at least—
She hesitated and stopped.
At least what?
Said Louisa, with her searching eyes upon her.
I thought it best myself that I should be sent away, for I felt very uncertain whether you would like to find me here.
Have I always hated you so much?
I hope not, for I've always loved you, and I've always wished that you should know it. But you changed to me a little shortly before you left home. Not that I wondered at it. You knew so much, and I knew so little, and it was so natural in many ways, going as you were among other friends, that I had nothing to complain of, and was not at all hurt.
Her colour rose as she said it modestly and hurriedly. Louisa understood the loving pretence, and her heart smote her.
May I try?
Said Sissy, emboldened to raise her hand to the neck that was insensibly drooping towards her. Louisa, taking down the hand that would have embraced her in another moment, held it in one of hers, and answered,
First, Sissy, do you know what I am? I am so proud and so hardened, so confused and troubled, so resentful and unjust to everyone and to myself, that everything is stormy, dark, and wicked to me. Does not that repel you?
No.
I am so unhappy, and all that should have made me otherwise is so laid waste, that if I had been bereft of sense to this hour, and instead of being as learned as you think me, had to begin to acquire the simplest truths, I could not want a guide to peace, contentment, honour, all the good of which I am quite devoid, more abjectly than I do. Does not that repel you?
No.
In the innocence of her brave affection, and the brimming up of her old devoted spirit, The once deserted girl shone like a beautiful light upon the darkness of the other. Louisa raised the hand that it might clasp her neck and join its fellow there. She fell upon her knees, and clinging to this stroller's child, looked up at her almost with veneration.
Forgive me, pity me, help me. Have compassion on my great need, and let me lay this head of mine upon a loving heart.
Oh, lay it here,
cried Sissy.
lay it here, my dear.
End of chapter 1. Chapter 2 of Hard Times, by Charles Dickens. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Hard Times, by Charles Dickens. Chapter 2. Very Ridiculous. Mr. James Harthouse passed a whole night and a day in a state of so much hurry that the world, with its best glass in his eye, would scarcely have recognized him during that insane interval as the brother Jem of the honourable and jocular member. He was positively agitated. He several times spoke with an emphasis similar to the vulgar manner. He went in and went out in an unaccountable way like a man without an object. He rode like a highwayman. In a word, he was so horribly bored by existing circumstances that he forgot to go in for boredom in the manner prescribed by the authorities. After putting his horse at Coketown through the storm, as if it were a leap, he waited up all night, from time to time ringing his bell with the greatest fury, charging the porter who kept watch with delinquency in withholding letters or messages that could not fail to have been entrusted to him, and demanding restitution on the spot. The dawn coming, the morning coming, and the day coming, and neither a message nor letter coming with either, he went down to the country house. There the report was, Mr. Bounderby away, and Mrs. Bounderby in town, left for town suddenly last evening, not even known to be gone until receipt of message, importing that her return was not to be expected for the present. In these circumstances he had nothing for it but to follow her to town. He went to the house in town. Mrs. Bounderby not there. He looked in at the bank. Mr. Bounderby away, and Mrs. Sparsit away. Mrs. Sparsit away? Who could have been reduced to sudden extremity for the company of that griffin?
Well, I don't know,
said Tom, who had his own reasons for being uneasy about it.
She was off somewhere at daybreak this morning. She's always full of mystery. I hate her. So I do that white chap. He's always got his blinking eyes upon a fellow.
Where were you last night, Tom?
Where was I last night?
said Tom.
Come, I like that. I was waiting for you, Mr. Harthouse, till it came down as I never saw it come down before. Where was I, too? Where were you, you mean?
I was prevented from coming. Detained.
Detained?
Murmured Tom.
2 of us were detained. I was detained looking for you till I lost every train but the mail. Would have been a pleasant job to go down by that on such a night, and have to walk home through a pond. I was obliged to sleep in town after all.
Where?
Where? Why, in my own bed at Bounderby's.
Did you see your sister?
How the deuce?
returned Tom, staring.
Could I see my sister when she was 15 miles off?
Cursing these quick retorts of the young gentleman to whom he was so true a friend, Mr. Harthouse disembarrassed himself of that interview with the smallest conceivable amount of ceremony, and debated for the 100th time what all this could mean. He made only one thing clear. It was, that whether she was in town or out of town, whether he had been premature with her who was so hard to comprehend, or she had lost courage, or they were discovered, or some mischance or mistake, at present incomprehensible, had occurred, he must remain to confront his fortune, whatever it was. The hotel where he was known to live when condemned to that region of blackness was the stake to which he was tied. As to all the rest, what will be, will be.
So, whether I am waiting for a hostile message, or an assignation, or a penitent remonstrance, or an impromptu wrestle with my friend Bounderby in the Lancashire manner, which would seem as likely as anything else in the present state of affairs, I'll dine,"
said Mr. James Harthouse.
"Bounderby has the advantage in point of weight, and if anything of a British nature is to come off between us, it may be as well to be in training."
Therefore he rang the bell, and tossing himself negligently on a sofa, ordered
"Some dinner at 6, with a beefsteak in it,"
and got through the intervening time as well as he could. That was not particularly well, for he remained in the greatest perplexity, and as the hours went on, and no kind of explanation offered itself, his perplexity augmented at compound interest. However, he took affairs as coolly as it was in human nature to do, and entertained himself with the facetious idea of the training more than once.
"It wouldn't be bad,"
he yawned at one time,
"to give the waiter 5 shillings and throw him."
At another time it occurred to him,
"Or a fellow of 13 or 14 stone might be hired by the hour."
But these jests did not tell materially on the afternoon, or his suspense, and sooth to say they both lagged fearfully. It was impossible, even before dinner, to avoid often walking about in the pattern of the carpet, looking out of the window, listening at the door for footsteps, and occasionally becoming rather hot when any steps approached that room. But after dinner, when the day turned to twilight, and the twilight turned to night, and still no communication was made to him, it began to be, as he expressed it,
"like the Holy Office and slow torture."
However, still true to his conviction that indifference was the genuine high breeding, the only conviction he had, he seized this crisis as the opportunity for ordering candles and a newspaper. He had been trying in vain, for half an hour, to read this newspaper, when the waiter appeared and said, at once mysteriously and apologetically,
"Beg your pardon, sir. You're wanted, sir, if you please."
A general recollection that this was the kind of thing the police said to the swell mob caused Mr. Harthouse to ask the waiter in return, with bristling indignation, what the devil he meant by "wanted."
"Beg your pardon, sir. Young lady outside, sir, wishes to see you."
"Outside? Where?"
"Outside this door, sir."
Giving the waiter to the personage before mentioned, as a blockhead duly qualified for that consignment, Mr. Harthouse hurried into the gallery. A young woman, whom he had never seen, stood there, plainly dressed, very quiet, very pretty. As he conducted her into the room and placed a chair for her, he observed, by the light of the candles, that she was even prettier than he had at first believed. Her face was innocent and youthful, and its expression remarkably pleasant. She was not afraid of him, or in any way disconcerted. She seemed to have her mind entirely preoccupied with the occasion of her visit, and to have substituted that consideration for herself.
"I speak to Mr. Harthouse?"
she said, when they were alone.
"To Mr. Harthouse,"
he added in his mind,
"and you speak to him with the most confiding eyes I ever saw, and the most earnest voice, though so quiet, I ever heard."
"If I do not understand, and I do not, sir,"
said Sissy,
"what your honour as a gentleman binds you to in other matters."
The blood really rose in his face as she began in these words,
"I am sure I may rely upon it to keep my visit secret, and to keep secret what I am going to say. I will rely upon it, if you tell me I may so far trust."
"You may, I assure you."
I am young, as you see. I am alone, as you see. In coming to you, sir, I have no advice or encouragement beyond my own hope.
He thought.
But that is very strong.
As he followed the momentary upward glance of her eyes, he thought besides,
This is a very odd beginning. I don't see where we are going.
I think,
said Sissy,
you have already guessed whom I left just now.
I have been in the greatest concern and uneasiness during the past 24 hours, which have appeared as many years.
he returned.
On a lady's account. The hopes I have been encouraged to form that you come from that lady do not deceive me, I trust.
I left her within an hour.
At
her father's.
Mr. Harthouse's face lengthened in spite of his coolness, and his perplexity increased.
Then I certainly,
he thought,
do not see where we are going.
She hurried there last night. She arrived there in great agitation, and was insensible all through the night. I live at her father's, and was with her. You may be sure, sir, you will never see her again as long as you live.
Mr. Harthouse drew a long breath, and if ever man found himself in the position of not knowing what to say, made the discovery beyond all question that he was so circumstanced. The childlike ingenuousness with which his visitor spoke, her modest fearlessness, her truthfulness which put all artifice aside, her entire forgetfulness of herself in her earnest, quiet holding to the object with which she had come, all this, together with her reliance on his easily given promise, which in itself shamed him, presented something in which he was so inexperienced, and against which he knew any of his usual weapons would fall so powerless, that not a word could he rally to his relief. At last he said,
So startling an announcement, so confidently made, and by such lips, is really disconcerting in the last degree. May I be permitted to inquire, if you are charged to convey that information to me in those hopeless words, by the lady of whom we speak?
I have no charge from her.
The drowning man catches at the straw. With no disrespect for your judgment, and no doubt of your sincerity, excuse my saying that I cling to the belief that there is yet hope that I am not condemned to perpetual exile from that lady's presence.
There is not the least hope. The first object of my coming here, sir, is to assure you that you must believe that there is no more hope of your ever speaking with her again than there would be if she had died when she came home last night.
Must believe? But if I can't, or if I should, by infirmity of nature, be obstinate, and won't?
It is still true. There is no hope.
James Harthouse looked at her with an incredulous smile upon his lips, but her mind looked over and beyond him, and the smile was quite thrown away. He bit his lip, and took a little time for consideration.
Well, if it should unhappily appear,
he said,
after due pains and duty on my part, that I am brought to a position so desolate as this banishment, I shall not become the lady's persecutor. But you said you had no commission from her?
I have only the commission of my love for her, and her love for me. I have no other trust, than that I have been with her since she came home, and that she has given me her confidence. I have no further trust, than that I know something of her character and her marriage. Oh, Mr. Harthouse, I think you had that trust too.
He was touched in the cavity where his heart should have been, in that nest of addled eggs, where the birds of heaven would have lived if they had not been whistled away, by the fervour of this reproach.
I am not a moral sort of fellow,
he said,
and I never make any pretensions to the character of a moral sort of fellow. I am as immoral as need be. At the same time, in bringing any distress upon the lady who is the subject of the present conversation, or in unfortunately compromising her in any way, or in committing myself by any expression of sentiments towards her, not perfectly reconcilable with, in fact, with the domestic hearth, or in taking any advantage of her father's being a machine, or of her brother's being a whelp, or of her husband's being a bear, I beg to be allowed to assure you that I have had no particularly evil intentions, but have glided on from one step to another with a smoothness so perfectly diabolical, that I had not the slightest idea the catalogue was half so long until I began to turn it over. Whereas I find,
said Mr. James Harthouse, in conclusion,
"that it is really in several volumes."
Though he said all this in his frivolous way, the way seemed, for that once, a conscious polishing of but an ugly surface. He was silent for a moment, and then proceeded with a more self-possessed air, though with traces of vexation and disappointment that would not be polished out.
"After what has just now been represented to me, in a manner I find it impossible to doubt. I know of hardly any other source from which I could have accepted it so readily. I feel bound to say to you, in whom the confidence you have mentioned has been reposed, that I cannot refuse to contemplate the possibility, however unexpected, of my seeing the lady no more. I am solely to blame for the thing having come to this, and I cannot say,"
he added, rather hard up for a general peroration,
"that I have any sanguine expectation of ever becoming a moral sort of fellow, or that I have any belief in any moral sort of fellow whatever."
Cissy's face sufficiently showed that her appeal to him was not finished.
"You spoke,"
he resumed, as she raised her eyes to him again,
"of your first object. I may assume that there is a second to be mentioned?"
Yes,
"Will you oblige me by confiding it?"
Mr. Harthouse."
returned Cissy, with a blending of gentleness and steadiness that quite defeated him, and with a simple confidence in his being bound to do what she required, that held him at a singular disadvantage.
"The only reparation that remains with you is to leave here immediately and finally. I am quite sure that you can mitigate in no other way the wrong and harm you have done. I am quite sure that it is the only compensation you have left it in your power to make. I do not say that it is much, or that it is enough, but it is something, and it is necessary. Therefore, though without any other authority than I have given you, and even without the knowledge of any other person than yourself and myself, I ask you to depart from this place to-night, under an obligation never to return to it."
If she had asserted any influence over him beyond her plain faith in the truth and right of what she said, if she had concealed the least doubt or irresolution, or had harboured, for the best purpose, any reserve or pretence, if she had shown or felt the lightest trace of any sensitiveness to his ridicule or his astonishment, or any remonstrance he might offer, he would have carried it against her at this point. But he could as easily have changed a clear sky by looking at it in surprise as affect her.
"But do you know,"
he asked, quite at a loss,
"the extent of what you ask? You probably are not aware that I am here on a public kind of business, preposterous enough in itself, but which I have gone in for, and sworn by, and am supposed to be devoted to in quite a desperate manner? You probably are not aware of that, but I assure you it's the fact."
It had no effect on Cissy, fact or no fact.
"Besides which,"
said Mr. Harthouse, taking a turn or two across the room, dubiously,
"it's so alarmingly absurd. It would make a man so ridiculous, after going in for these fellows, to back out in such an incomprehensible way."
"I am quite sure,"
repeated Cissy,
"that it is the only reparation in your power, sir. I am quite sure, or I would not have come here."
He glanced at her face, and walked about again.
"Upon my soul, I don't know what to say. So immensely absurd."
It fell to his lot now to stipulate for secrecy.
"If I were to do such a very ridiculous thing,"
he said, stopping again presently, and leaning against the chimney-piece,
"it could only be in the most inviolable confidence."
"I will trust to you, sir."
returned Cissy.
"And you will trust to me."
His leaning against the chimney-piece reminded him of the night with the whelp. It was the self-same chimney-piece, and somehow he felt as if he were the whelp to-night. He could make no way at all.
"I suppose a man never was placed in a more ridiculous position,"
he said, after looking down, and looking up, and laughing, and frowning, and walking off, and walking back again.
"But I see no way out of it. What will be, will be. This will be, I suppose. I must take off myself, I imagine. In short, I engage to do it."
Cissy rose. She was not surprised by the result, but she was happy in it, and her face beamed brightly.
"You will permit me to say,"
continued Mr. James Harthouse,
"that I doubt if any other ambassador or ambassadress could have addressed me with the same success. I must not only regard myself as being in a very ridiculous position, but as being vanquished at all points. Will you allow me the privilege of remembering my enemy's name?"
My name?
said the ambassadress.
"The only name I could possibly care to know to-night."
Cissy Jupe.
"Pardon my curiosity at parting. Related to the family?"
I am only a poor girl.
returned Cissy.
I was separated from my father. He was only a stroller, and taken pity on by Mr. Gradgrind. I have lived in the house ever since.
She was gone.
"It wanted this to complete the defeat,"
said Mr. James Harthouse, sinking with a resigned air on the sofa, after standing transfixed a little while.
"The defeat may now be considered perfectly accomplished. Only a poor girl, only a stroller, only James Harthouse made nothing of, only James Harthouse a great pyramid of failure."
The great pyramid put it into his head to go up the Nile. He took a pen upon the instant, and wrote the following note, in appropriate hieroglyphics, to his brother.
"Dear Jack, all up at Coketown, bored out of the place, and going in for camels. Affectionately, Jem."
He rang the bell.
"Send my fellow here.
Gone to bed, sir."
Tell him to get up and pack up."
He wrote 2 more notes, one to Mr. Bounderby, announcing his retirement from that part of the country, and showing where he would be found for the next fortnight; the other, similar in effect, to Mr. Gradgrind. Almost as soon as the ink was dry upon their superscriptions, he had left the tall chimneys of Coketown behind, and was in a railway carriage, tearing and glaring over the dark landscape. The moral sort of fellows might suppose that Mr. James Harthouse derived some comfortable reflections afterwards from this prompt retreat, as one of his few actions that made any amends for anything, and as a token to himself that he had escaped the climax of a very bad business. But it was not so at all. A secret sense of having failed and been ridiculous, a dread of what other fellows who went in for similar sorts of things would say at his expense if they knew it, so oppressed him, that what was about the very best passage in his life was the one of all others he would not have owned to on any account, and the only one that made him ashamed of himself. Chapter 3 of Hard Times, by Charles Dickens. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Hard Times, by Charles Dickens. Chapter 3. Very Decided. The indefatigable Mrs. Sparsit, with a violent cold upon her, her voice reduced to a whisper, and her stately frame so racked by continual sneezes that it seemed in danger of dismemberment, gave chase to her patron until she found him in the metropolis, and there, majestically sweeping in upon him at his hotel in St. James's Street, exploded the combustibles with which she was charged, and blew up. Having executed her mission with infinite relish, this high-minded woman then fainted away on Mr. Bounderby's coat-collar. Mr. Bounderby's first procedure was to shake Mrs. Sparsit off, and leave her to progress as she might through various stages of suffering on the floor. He next had recourse to the administration of potent restoratives, such as screwing the patient's thumbs, smiting her hands, abundantly watering her face, and inserting salt in her mouth. When these attentions had recovered her, which they speedily did, he hustled her into a fast train without offering any other refreshment, and carried her back to Coketown more dead than alive. Regarded as a classical ruin, Mrs. Sparsit was an interesting spectacle on her arrival at her journey's end, but, considered in any other light, the amount of damage she had by that time sustained was excessive, and impaired her claims to admiration. Utterly heedless of the wear and tear of her clothes and constitution, and adamant to her pathetic sneezes, Mr. Bounderby immediately crammed her into a coach, and bore her off to Stone Lodge.
"Now, Tom Gradgrind,"
said Bounderby, bursting into his father-in-law's room late at night,
"here's a lady here, Mrs. Sparsit. You know Mrs. Sparsit, who has something to say to you that will strike you dumb."
You have missed my letter,
exclaimed Mr. Gradgrind, surprised by the apparition.
"Missed your letter, sir?"
bawled Bounderby.
"The present time is no time for letters. No man shall talk to Josiah Bounderby of Coketown about letters, with his mind in the state it's in now."
Bounderby,
said Mr. Gradgrind, in a tone of temperate remonstrance.
I speak of a very special letter I have written to you in reference to Louisa.
"Tom Gradgrind,"
replied Bounderby, knocking the flat of his hand several times with great vehemence on the table,
"I speak of a very special messenger that has come to me in reference to Louisa. Mrs. Sparsit, ma'am, stand forward."
That unfortunate lady, hereupon essaying to offer testimony, without any voice, and with painful gestures expressive of an inflamed throat, became so aggravating and underwent so many facial contortions, that Mr. Bounderby, unable to bear it, seized her by the arm and shook her.
"If you can't get it out, ma'am," said
Bounderby,
"leave me to get it out. This is not a time for a lady, however highly connected, to be totally inaudible and seemingly swallowing marbles. Tom Gradgrind, Mrs. Sparsit lately found herself, by accident, in a situation to overhear a conversation out of doors between your daughter and your precious gentleman friend, Mr. James Harthouse."
Indeed,
said Mr. Gradgrind.
"Ah, indeed!"
cried Bounderby.
"And in that conversation—"
It is not necessary to repeat its tenor, Bounderby. I know what passed."
"You do? Perhaps,"
said Bounderby, staring with all his might at his so quiet and assuasive father-in-law,
"you know where your daughter is at the present time?"
Undoubtedly. She is here.
"Here?"
My dear Bounderby, let me beg you to restrain these loud outbreaks on all accounts. Louisa is here. The moment she could detach herself from that interview with the person of whom you speak, and whom I deeply regret to have been the means of introducing to you, Louisa hurried here for protection. I myself had not been at home many hours when I received her, here in this room. She hurried by the train to town. She ran from town to this house, through a raging storm, and presented herself before me in a state of distraction. Of course, she has remained here ever since. Let me entreat you, for your own sake and for hers, to be more quiet."
Mr. Bounderby silently gazed about him for some moments in every direction except Mrs. Sparsit's direction, and then, abruptly turning upon the niece of Lady Scadgers, said to that wretched woman,
"Now, ma'am, we shall be happy to hear any little apology you may think proper to offer for going about the country at express pace, with no other luggage than a cock and bull, ma'am."
"Sir,"
whispered Mrs. Sparsit,
"my nerves are at present too much shaken, and my health is at present too much impaired, in your service, to admit of my doing more than taking refuge in tears."
Which she did.
"Well, ma'am,"
said Bounderby,
"without making any observation to you that may not be made with propriety to a woman of good family, What I have got to add to that is that there is something else in which it appears to me you may take refuge, namely a coach, and the coach in which we came here being at the door, you'll allow me to hand you down to it and pack you on to the bank, where the best course for you to pursue will be to put your feet into the hottest water you can bear and take a glass of scalding rum and butter after you get into bed."
With these words Mr. Bounderby extended his right hand to the weeping lady, and escorted her to the conveyance in question, shedding many plaintive sneezes by the way. He soon returned alone.
"Now, as you showed me in your face, Tom Gradgrind, that you wanted to speak to me,"
he resumed,
"here I am. But I am not in a very agreeable state, I tell you plainly, not relishing this business even as it is, and not considering that I am at any time as dutifully and submissively treated by your daughter as Josiah Bounderby of Coketown ought to be treated by his wife. You have your opinion, I dare say, and I have mine. I know, if you mean to say anything to me to-night that goes against this candid remark, you had better let it alone."
Mr. Gradgrind, it will be observed, being much softened, Mr. Bounderby took particular pains to harden himself at all points. It was his amiable nature.
"My dear Bounderby,"
Mr. Gradgrind began in reply,
"Now you'll excuse me, but I don't want to be too dear, that is to start with. When I begin to be dear to a man, I generally find that his intention is to come over me. I'm not speaking to you politely, but as you are aware I am not polite. If you like politeness, you know where to get it. You have your gentleman friends, you know, and they'll serve you with as much of the article as you want. I don't keep it myself."
"Bounderby,"
urged Mr. Gradgrind,
"we are all liable for mistakes."
"I thought you couldn't make 'em,"
interrupted Bounderby.
"Perhaps I thought so. But I say we are all liable to mistakes, and I should feel sensible of your delicacy, and grateful for it, if you would spare me these references to Harthouse. I shall not associate him in our conversation with your intimacy and encouragement. Pray do not persist in connecting him with mine."
"I never mentioned his name,"
said Bounderby.
"Well, well,"
returned Mr. Gradgrind, with a patient, even a submissive air, and he sat for a little while pondering.
"Bounderby, I see reason to doubt whether we have ever quite understood Louisa."
"Who d'ye mean by we?"
"Let me say I, then,"
he returned, in answer to the coarsely blurted question.
"I doubt whether I have understood Louisa. I doubt whether I have been quite right in the manner of her education."
"There you hit it,"
returned Bounderby.
"There I agree with you. You've found it out at last, have you? Education! I'll tell you what education is. To be tumbled out of doors, neck and crop, and put on the shortest allowance of everything except blows. That's what I call education."
"I think your good sense will perceive,"
Mr. Gradgrind remonstrated in all humility,
"that whatever the merits of such a system may be, it would be difficult of general application to girls."
"I don't see it at all, sir,"
returned the obstinate Bounderby.
"Well,"
sighed Mr. Gradgrind,
"we will not enter into the question. I assure you I have no desire to be controversial. I seek to repair what is amiss, if I possibly can, and I hope you will assist me in a good spirit, Bounderby, for I have been very much distressed."
"I don't understand you yet,"
said Bounderby, with determined obstinacy,
"and therefore I won't make any promises."
"In the course of a few hours, my dear Bounderby,"
Mr. Gradgrind proceeded, in the same depressed and propitiatory manner,
"I appear to myself to have become better informed as to Louisa's character than in previous years. The enlightenment has been painfully forced upon me, and the discovery is not mine. I think there are, Bounderby, you will be surprised to hear me say this, I think there are qualities in Louisa which, which have been harshly neglected and a little perverted, and I would suggest to you that if you would kindly meet me in a timely endeavor to leave her to her better nature for a while, and to encourage it to develop itself by tenderness and consideration, it would be the better for the happiness of all of us. Louisa,
said Mr. Gradgrind, shading his face with his hand,
has always been my favourite child.
The blusterous Bounderby crimsoned and swelled to such an extent on hearing these words, that he seemed to be, and probably was, on the brink of a fit. With his very ears a bright purple shot with crimson, he pent up his indignation, however, and said,
"You'd like to keep her here for a time?"
I had intended to recommend, my dear Bounderby, that you should allow Louisa to remain here on a visit, and be attended by Sissy, I mean, of course, Cecilia Jupe, who understands her, and in whom she trusts.
"I gather from all this, Tom Gradgrind,"
said Bounderby, standing up with his hands in his pockets,
"that you are of the opinion that there's what people call some incompatibility between Lou Bounderby and myself."
I fear there is at present a general incompatibility between Louisa and almost all the relations in which I have placed her,
was her father's sorrowful reply.
"Now look you here, Tom Gradgrind,"
said Bounderby the flushed, confronting him with his legs wide apart, his hands deeper in his pockets, and his hair like a hayfield wherein his windy anger was boisterous.
"You have said your say. I'm going to say mine. I am a Coketown man. I am Josiah Bounderby of Coketown. I know the bricks of this town, and I know the works of this town, and I know the chimneys of this town, and I know the smoke of this town, and I know the hands of this town. I know 'em all pretty well. They're real. When a man tells me anything about imaginative qualities, I always tell that man, whoever he is, that I know what he means. He means turtle soup and venison with a gold spoon, and that he wants to be set up with a coach and six. That's what your daughter wants. Since you are of opinion that she ought to have what she wants, I recommend you to provide it for her, because, Tom Gradgrind, she will never have it from me."
Bounderby,
said Mr. Gradgrind,
I hoped, after my entreaty, you would have taken a different tone.
"Just wait a bit,"
retorted Bounderby.
"You had your say, I believe. I heard you out. Hear me out, if you please. Don't make a spectacle of unfairness as well as inconsistency, because although I am sorry to see Tom Gradgrind reduced to his present position, I should be doubly sorry to see him brought so low as that. Now, there's an incompatibility of some sort or another, I am given to understand by you, between your daughter and me. I'll give you to understand in reply to that there unquestionably is an incompatibility of the first magnitude, to be summed up in this: that your daughter don't properly know her husband's merits, and is not impressed with such a sense as would become her, by George, of the honour of his alliance. That's plain speaking, I hope."
Bounderby,
urged Mr. Gradgrind.
"This is unreasonable."
"Is it?"
said Bounderby.
"I'm glad to hear you say so, because when Tom Gradgrind, with his new lights, tells me that what I say is unreasonable, I am convinced at once it must be devilish sensible. With your permission, I'm going on. You know my origin, and you know that for a good many years of my life I didn't want a shoeing horn, in consequence of not having a shoe. Yet you may believe it or not, as you think proper, that there are ladies, born ladies, belonging to families, who next to worship the ground I walk on."
He discharged this like a rocket at his father-in-law's head.
"Whereas your daughter,"
proceeded Bounderby,
"is far from being a born lady. That you know yourself. Not that I care a pinch of candle snuff about such things, for you are very well aware I don't. But that such is the fact, and you, Tom Gradgrind, can't change it. Why do I say this?
Not, I fear,
observed Mr. Gradgrind in a low voice.
to spare me.
Hear me out,
said Bounderby,
and refrain from cutting in till your turn comes round. I say this because highly connected females have been astonished to see the way in which your daughter has conducted herself, and to witness her insensibility. They've wondered how I have suffered it, and I wonder myself now, and I won't suffer it.
Bounderby,
returned Mr. Gradgrind, rising,
the less we say to-night, the better, I think.
On the contrary, Tom Gradgrind, the more we say to-night, the better, I think. That is—
the consideration checked him.
Till I have said all I mean to say, and then I don't care how soon we stop. I come to a question that may shorten the business. What do you mean by the proposal you made just now?
What do I mean, Bounderby?
By your visiting proposition,
said Bounderby, with an inflexible jerk of the hayfield.
I mean that I hope you may be induced to arrange in a friendly manner for allowing Louisa a period of repose and reflection here, which may tend to a gradual alteration for the better in many respects.
To a softening down of your ideas of the incompatibility,
said Bounderby.
If you put it in those terms.
What made you think of this?
I have already said I fear Louisa has not been understood. Is it asking too much, Bounderby, that you, so far her elder, should aid in trying to set her right? You have accepted a great charge of her, for better, for worse, for—
Mr. Bounderby may have been annoyed by the repetition of his own words to Stephen Blackpool, but he cut the quotation short with an angry start.
Come,
said he,
I don't want to be told about that. I know what I took her for as well as you do. Never you mind what I took her for, that's my lookout.
I was merely going on to remark, Bounderby, that we may all be more or less in the wrong, not even excepting you, and that some yielding on your part, remembering the trust you have accepted, may not only be an act of true kindness, but perhaps a debt incurred towards Louisa.
I think differently,
blustered Bounderby.
I'm going to finish this business according to my own opinions. Now, I don't want to make a quarrel of it with you, Tom Gradgrind. To tell the truth, I don't think it would be worthy of my reputation to quarrel on such a subject. As to your gentleman friend, he may take himself off wherever he likes best. If he falls in my way, I shall tell him my mind. If he don't fall in my way, I shan't, for it won't be worth my while to do it. As to your daughter, who I made Lou Bounderby, and might have done better by leaving Lou Gradgrind, if she don't come home to-morrow by 12 o'clock at noon, I shall understand that she prefers to stay away, and I shall send her wearing apparel and so forth over here, and you'll take charge of her for the future. What I shall say to people in general of the incompatibility that led to my so laying down the law will be this. I am Josiah Bounderby, and I had my bringing up. She's the daughter of Tom Gradgrind, and she had her bringing up, and the two horses wouldn't pull together. I'm pretty well known to be rather an uncommon man, I believe, and most people will understand fast enough that it must be a woman, rather out of the common also, who in the long run would come up to my mark.
Let me seriously entreat you to reconsider this, Bounderby,
urged Mr. Gradgrind,
before you commit yourself to such a decision.
I always come to a decision,
said Bounderby, tossing his hat on,
and whatever I do at once. I should be surprised at Tom Gradgrind addressing such a remark to Josiah Bounderby of Coketown, knowing what he knows of him. If I could be surprised by anything Tom Gradgrind did after his making himself a party to sentimental humbug. I've given you my decision, and I have got no more to say. Good night,
So Mr. Bounderby went home to his town house to bed. At 5 minutes past 12 o'clock next day, he directed Mrs. Bounderby's property to be carefully packed up and sent to Tom Gradgrind's, advertised his country retreat for sale by private contract, and resumed a bachelor life. Chapter 3. Chapter 4 of Hard Times, by Charles Dickens. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Hard Times, by Charles Dickens. Chapter 4. Lost. The robbery at the bank had not languished before, and did not cease to occupy a front place in the attention of the principal of that establishment now. In boastful proof of his promptitude and activity, as a remarkable man and a self-made man, and a commercial wonder more admirable than Venus, who had risen out of the mud instead of the sea, he liked to show how little his domestic affairs abated his business ardour. Consequently, in the first few weeks of his resumed bachelorhood, he even advanced upon his usual display of bustle, and every day made such a rout in renewing his investigations into the robbery, that the officers who had it in hand almost wished it had never been committed. They were at fault too, and off the scent. Although they had been so quiet since the first outbreak of the matter, that most people really did suppose it to have been abandoned as hopeless, nothing new occurred. No man or woman took untimely courage, or made a self-betraying step. More remarkable yet, Stephen Blackpool could not be heard of, and the mysterious old woman remained a mystery. Things having come to this pass, and showing no latent signs of stirring beyond it, the upshot of Mr. Bounderby's investigations was, that he resolved to hazard a bold burst. He drew up a placard, offering £20 reward for the apprehension of Stephen Blackpool, suspected of complicity in the robbery of Coketown Bank on such a night. He described the said Stephen Blackpool by dress, complexion, estimated height, and manner as minutely as he could. He recited how he had left the town, and in what direction he had been last seen going. He had the whole printed in great black letters on a staring broadsheet, and he caused the walls to be posted with it in the dead of night, so that it should strike upon the sight of the whole population at one blow. The factory bells had need to ring their loudest that morning, to disperse the groups of workers who stood in the tardy daybreak, collected round the placards, devouring them with eager eyes. Not the least eager of the eyes assembled were the eyes of those who could not read. These people, as they listened to the friendly voice that read aloud, there was always some such ready to help them, stared at the characters which meant so much with a vague awe and respect that would have been half ludicrous, if any aspect of public ignorance could ever be otherwise than threatening and full of evil. Many ears and eyes were busy with a vision of the matter of these placards, among turning spindles, rattling looms, and whirling wheels, for hours afterwards; and when the hands cleared out again into the streets, there were still as many readers as before. Slackbridge, the delegate, had to address his audience too that night, and Slackbridge had obtained a clean bill from the printer, and brought it in his pocket. "Oh, my friends and fellow-countrymen, the down-trodden operatives of Coketown! Oh, my fellow-brothers and fellow-workmen and fellow-citizens and fellow-men! What a to-do was there when Slackbridge unfolded what he called
that damning document,
and held it up to the gaze and for the execration of the working-man community.
O my fellow men, behold of what a traitor in the camp of those great spirits who are enrolled upon the holy scroll of justice and of union is appropriately capable. O my prostrate friends, with the galling yoke of tyrants on your necks, and the iron foot of despotism treading down your fallen forms into the dust of the earth, upon which right glad would your oppressors be to see you creeping on your bellies all the days of your lives, like the serpent in the garden. O my brothers, and shall I as a man not add my sisters too? What do you say now of Stephen Blackpool, with a slight stoop in his shoulders and about 5'7" in height, as set forth in this degrading and disgusting document, this blighting bill, this pernicious placard, this abominable advertisement? And with what majesty of denouncement will you crush the viper, who would bring this stain and shame upon the godlike race that happily has cast him out forever? Yes, my compatriots, happily cast him out and sent him forth. For you remember how he stood here before you on this platform. You remember how, face to face and foot to foot, I pursued him through all his intricate windings. You remember how he sneaked and slunk, and sidled and splitted of straws, until, with not an inch of ground to which to cling, I hurled him out from amongst us, an object for the undying finger of scorn to point at, and for the avenging fire of every free and thinking mind to scorch and scar. And now, my friends, my labouring friends, for I rejoice and triumph in that stigma, my friends whose hard but honest beds are made in toil, and whose scanty but independent pots are boiled in hardship. And now I say, my friends, what appellation has that dastard craven taken to himself, when, with the mask torn from his features, he stands before us in all his native deformity? A what? A thief, a plunderer, a proscribed fugitive, with a price upon his head, a fester and a wound upon the noble character of the Coketown operative. Therefore, my band of brothers in a sacred bond, to which your children and your children's children yet unborn have set their infant hands and seals, I propose to you on the part of the United Aggregate Tribunal, ever watchful for your welfare, ever zealous for your benefit, that this meeting does resolve, that Stephen Blackpool, weaver, referred to in this placard, having been already solemnly disowned by the community of Coketown hands, the same are free from the shame of his misdeeds, and cannot as a class be reproached with his dishonest actions.
Thus Slackbridge, gnashing and perspiring after a prodigious sort. A few stern voices called out,
"No! No!"
and a score or two hailed with assenting cries of
"Here, here!"
the caution from one man,
"Slackbridge, you're over-hettering. You're going too fast."
But these were pygmies against an army. The general assemblage subscribed to the gospel according to Slackbridge, and gave 3 cheers for him as he sat demonstratively panting at them. These men and women were yet in the streets, passing quietly to their homes, when Sissy, who had been called away from Louisa some minutes before, returned.
"Who is it?"
asked Louisa.
"It is Mr. Bounderby,"
said Sissy, timid of the name.
"and your brother Mr. Tom, and the young woman who says her name is Rachel, and that you know her."
"What do they want, Sissy dear?"
"They want to see you. Rachel has been crying, and seems angry."
"Father,"
said Louisa, for he was present,
"I cannot refuse to see them, for a reason that will explain itself. Shall they come in here?"
As he answered in the affirmative, Sissy went away to bring them. She reappeared with them directly. Tom was last, and remained standing in the obscurest part of the room, near the door.
"Mrs. Bounderby,"
said her husband, entering with a cool nod.
"I don't disturb you, I hope. This is an unseasonable hour. But here is a young woman who has been making statements which render my visit necessary. Tom Gradgrind, as your son, young Tom, refuses, for some obstinate reason or other, to say anything at all about those statements, good or bad, I am obliged to confront her with your daughter."
"You have seen me once before, young lady,"
said Rachel, standing in front of Louisa. Tom coughed.
"You have seen me, young lady,"
repeated Rachel, as she did not answer.
"once before."
Tom coughed again.
I have.
Rachel cast her eyes proudly towards Mr. Bounderby, and said,
"Will you make it known, young lady, where and who was there?"
I went to the house where Stephen Blackpool lodged, on the night of his discharge from his work, and I saw you there. He was there too. And an old woman who did not speak, and whom I could scarcely see, stood in a dark corner. My brother was with me."
"Why couldn't you say so, young Tom?"
demanded Bounderby.
I promised my sister I wouldn't.
Which Louisa hastily confirmed.
And besides,
said the whelp bitterly,
she tells her own story so precious well, and so full, that what business had I to take it out of her mouth?
"Say, young lady, if you please,"
pursued Rachel,
"why in an evil hour you ever came to Stephen's that night."
I felt compassion for him,
said Louisa, her colour deepening,
and I wished to know what he was going to do, and wished to offer him assistance.
"Thank you, ma'am,"
said Bounderby.
"Much flattered and obliged."
"Did you offer him,"
asked Rachel,
"a bank-note?"
Yes, but he refused it, and would take only £2 in gold.
Rachel cast her eyes towards Mr. Bounderby again.
"Oh, certainly,"
said Bounderby.
"If you put the question whether your ridiculous and improbable account was true or not, I'm bound to say it's confirmed."
"Young lady,"
said Rachel,
"Stephen Blackpool is now named as a thief in public print all over this town, and where else? There have been a meeting to-night where he have been spoken of in the same shameful way. Stephen, the honestest lad, the truest lad, the best."
Her indignation failed her, and she broke off, sobbing.
I am very, very sorry,
said Louisa.
"Oh, young lady,"
returned Rachel.
"I hope you may be, but I don't know. I can't say what you may have done. The like of you don't know us, don't care for us, don't belong to us. I am not sure why you may have come that night. I can't tell but what you may have come with some aim of your own, not minding to what trouble you brought such as the poor lad. I said then, bless you for coming, and I said it of my heart. You seemed to take so pitifully to him. But I don't know now, I don't know."
Louisa could not reproach her for her unjust suspicions. She was so faithful to her idea of the man, and so afflicted.
"And when I think,"
said Rachel, through her sobs,
"that the poor lad was so grateful, thinking you so good to him, when I mind that he put his hand over his hard-working face to hide the tears that you brought up there, oh, I hope you may be sorry, and ha' no bad cause to be it. But I don't know, I don't know."
You're a pretty article,
growled the whelp, moving uneasily in his dark corner,
to come here with these precious imputations. You ought to be bundled out for not knowing how to behave yourself, and you would be by rights.
She said nothing in reply, and her low weeping was the only sound that was heard until Mr. Bounderby spoke.
"Come,"
said he,
"you know what you're engaged to do. You'd better give your mind to that, not this."
"'Deed I am loath that any here should see me like this,"
returned Rachel, drying her eyes,
"but I won't be seen so again. Young lady, when I had read what's put in print to Stephen, and what has just as much truth in it as if it had been put in print to you, I went straight to the bank to say I knew where Stephen was, and to give a sure and certain promise that he should be here in 2 days. I couldn't meet with Mr. Bounderby then, and your brother sent me away, and I tried to find you, but you was not to be found, and I went back to work. Soon as I come out of the mill to-night, I hastened to hear what was said of Stephen, for I know with pride he will come back to shame it. And then I went again to seek Mr. Bounderby, and I found him, and I told him every word I knew, and he believed no word I said, and brought me here."
"So far, that's true enough,"
assented Mr. Bounderby, with his hands in his pockets and his hat on.
"But I've known you people before to-day, you'll observe, and I know you'll never die for want of talking. Now, I'll recommend you not so much to mind talking just now as doing. You've undertaken to do something. All I remark upon that at present is, do it."
"I have written to Stephen by the post that went out this afternoon, as I have written to him once before since he went away,"
said Rachel.
"and he will be here, at furthest, in 2 days."
"Then I'll tell you something. You are not aware, perhaps,"
retorted Mr. Bounderby,
"that you yourself have been looked after now and then, not being considered quite free from suspicion in this business, on account of most people being judged according to the company they keep. The post office hasn't been forgotten either. What I'll tell you is, that no letter to Stephen Blackpool has ever got into it. Therefore, what has become of yours? I leave you to guess. Perhaps you're mistaken, and never wrote any."
"He hadn't been gone from here, young lady, as much as a week,"
said Rachel, turning appealingly to Louisa,
"when he sent me the only letter I have had from him, saying that he was forced to seek work in another name."
"Oh, by George!"
cried Bounderby, shaking his head with a whistle.
"He changes his name, does he? That's rather unlucky, too, for such an immaculate chap. It's considered a little suspicious in courts of justice, I believe, when an innocent happens to have many names."
"What?"
said Rachel, with the tears in her eyes again.
"What, young lady, in the name of mercy, was left the poor lad to do? The masters against him on one hand, the men against him on the other, he only wanting to work hard in peace and do what he felt right. Can a man have no soul of his own, no mind of his own? Must he go wrong all through with this side, or must he go wrong all through with that, or else be hunted like a hare?"
Indeed, indeed, I pity him from my heart,
returned Louisa,
and I hope that he will clear himself.
"You need have no fear of that, young lady. He is sure."
"All the surer, I suppose,"
said Mr. Bounderby,
"for your refusing to tell where he is, eh?"
"He shall not, through any act of mine, come back with the unmerited reproach of being brought back. He shall come back of his own accord to clear himself, and to put all those that have injured his good character, and he not here for its defence, to shame. I have told him what has been done against him,"
said Rachel, throwing off all distrust as a rock throws off the sea,
"and he will be here at furthest in 2 days."
"Notwithstanding which,"
added Mr. Bounderby,
"if he can be laid hold of any sooner, he shall have an earlier opportunity of clearing himself. As to you, I've nothing against you. What you came and told me turns out to be true, and I've given you the means of proving it to be true, and there's an end of it. I wish you good night, all. I must be off to look a little further into this."
Tom came out of his corner when Mr. Bounderby moved with him, kept close to him, and went away with him. The only parting salutation of which he delivered himself was a sulky
"Good night, father."
With a brief speech and a scowl at his sister, he left the house. Since his sheet anchor had come home, Mr. Gradgrind had been sparing of speech. He still sat silent when Louisa mildly said,
"Rachel, you will not distrust me one day when you know me better."
"It goes against me,"
Rachel answered, in a gentler manner,
"to mistrust any one. But when I am so mistrusted, when we all are, I cannot keep such things quite out of my mind. I ask your pardon for having done you an injury. I don't think what I said now. Yet I might come to think it again with the poor lad so wronged."
"Did you tell him in your letter,"
inquired Sissy,
"that suspicion seemed to have fallen upon him because he had been seen about the bank at night? He would then know what he would have to explain on coming back, and would be ready."
"Yes, dear,"
she returned.
"But I can't guess what can ever have taken him there. He never used to go there. It was never in his way. His way was the same as mine, and not near it."
Sissy had already been at her side asking her where she lived, and whether she might come tomorrow night to inquire if there were news of him.
"I doubt,"
said Rachel,
"if he can be here till next day."
"Then I will come next night too,"
said Sissy. When Rachel, assenting to this, was gone, Mr. Gradgrind lifted up his head, and said to his daughter,
"Louisa, my dear, I have never, that I know of, seen this man. Do you believe him to be implicated?"
"I think I have believed it, father, though with great difficulty. I do not believe it now."
"That is to say, you once persuaded yourself to believe it from knowing him to be suspected. His appearance and manner, are they so honest?"
"Very honest."
"And her confidence not to be shaken? I ask myself,"
said Mr. Gradgrind, musing,
"does the real culprit know of these accusations? Where is he? Who is he?"
His hair had latterly begun to change its colour. As he leaned upon his hand again, looking grey and old, Louisa, with a face of fear and pity, hurriedly went over to him, and sat close at his side. Her eyes by accident met Sissy's at the moment. Sissy flushed and started, and Louisa put her finger on her lip. Next night, when Sissy returned home and told Louisa that Stephen was not come, she told it in a whisper. Next night again, when she came home with the same account, and added that he had not been heard of, she spoke in the same low, frightened tone. From the moment of that interchange of looks, they never uttered his name or any reference to him aloud, nor ever pursued the subject of the robbery when Mr. Gradgrind spoke of it. The 2 appointed days ran out. 3 days and nights ran out, and Stephen Blackpool was not come, and remained unheard of. On the 4th day, Rachel, with unabated confidence, but considering her despatch to have miscarried, went up to the bank, and showed her letter from him with his address at a working colony, one of many not upon the main road, 60 miles away. Messengers were sent to that place, and the whole town looked for Stephen to be brought in next day. During this whole time the whelp moved about with Mr. Bounderby like his shadow, assisting in all the proceedings. He was greatly excited, horribly fevered, bit his nails down to the quick, spoke in a hard rattling voice, and with lips that were black and burnt up. At the hour when the suspected man was looked for, the whelp was at the station, offering to wager that he had made off before the arrival of those who were sent in quest of him, and that he would not appear. The whelp was right. The messengers returned alone. Rachel's letter had gone. Rachel's letter had been delivered. Stephen Blackpool had decamped in that same hour, and no soul knew more of him. The only doubt in Coketown was whether Rachel had written in good faith, believing that he really would come back, or warning him to fly. On this point opinion was divided. 6 days, 7 days, far on into another week. The wretched whelp plucked up a ghastly courage, and began to grow defiant.
Was the suspected fellow the thief? Pretty question. If not, where was the man, and why did he not come back?
Where was the man, and why did he not come back? In the dead of night, the echoes of his own words, which had rolled heaven knows how far away the daytime, came back instead, and abided by him until morning. End of chapter 4. Chapter 5 of Hard Times, by Charles Dickens. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Hard Times, by Charles Dickens. Chapter 5. Found. Day and night again. Day and night again. No Stephen Blackpool. Where was the man, and why did he not come back? Every night Cissy went to Rachel's lodging, and sat with her in her small neat room. All day Rachel toiled as such people must toil, whatever their anxieties. The smoke-serpents were indifferent who was lost or found, who turned out bad or good. The melancholy mad elephants, like the hard-fact men, abated nothing of their set routine, whatever happened. Day and night again. Day and night again. The monotony was unbroken. Even Stephen Blackpool's disappearance was falling into the general way, and becoming as monotonous a wonder as any piece of machinery in Coketown.
I misdoubt,
said Rachel,
if there is as many as 20 left in all this place who have any trust in the poor dear lad now.
She said it to Cissy, as they sat in her lodging, lighted only by the lamp at the street corner. Cissy had come there when it was already dark, to await her return from work, and they had since sat at the window where Rachel had found her, wanting no brighter light to shine on their sorrowful talk.
If it hadn't been mercifully brought about that I was to have to speak to you,
pursued Rachel,
times are when I think my mind would not have kept right. But I get hope and strength through you, and you believe that though appearances may rise against him, he will be proved clear.
I do believe so,
returned Cissy.
with my whole heart. I feel so certain, Rachel, that the confidence you hold in yours against all discouragement is not like to be wrong, that I have no more doubt of him than if I had known him through as many years of trial as you have.
And I, my dear,
said Rachel, with a tremble in her voice,
have known him through them all to be, according to his quiet ways, so faithful to everything honest and good, that if he was never to be heard of more, and I was to live to be 100 years old, I could say with my last breath, God knows my heart, I have never once left trust in Stephen Blackpool.
We all believe, up at the lodge, Rachel, that he will be freed from suspicion, sooner or later.
The better I know it to be so believed there, my dear,
said Rachel,
and the kinder I feel it that you come away from there purposely to comfort me, and to keep me company, and be seen with me, when I am not yet free from all suspicion myself, the more grieved I am that I should ever have spoken those mistrusting words to the young lady. And yet
You don't mistrust her now, Rachel.
Now that you have brought us more together, no. But I can't at all times keep out of my mind.
Her voice so sunk into a low and slow communing with herself, that Cissy, sitting by her side, was obliged to listen with attention.
I can't at all times keep out of my mind mistrustings of someone. I can't think who 'tis, I can't think how or why it may be done, but I mistrust that someone has put Stephen out of the way. I mistrust that by his coming back of his own accord, and showing himself innocent before them all, someone would be confounded who, to prevent that, has stopped him and put him out of the way.
That is a dreadful thought,
said Cissy, turning pale.
It is a dreadful thought to think he may be murdered.
Cissy shuddered, and turned paler yet.
When it makes its way into my mind, dear,
said Rachel,
and it will come sometimes, though I do all I can to keep it out, with counting on to high numbers as I work, and saying over and over again pieces that I knew when I were a child, I fall into such a wild, hot hurry, that however tired I am, I want to walk fast, miles and miles. I must get the better of this before bedtime. I'll walk home with you.
He might fall ill upon the journey back."
said Sissy, faintly offering a worn-out scrap of hope.
"And in such a case there are many places on the road where he might stop."
"But he is in none of them. He has been sought for in all, and he is not there."
"True,"
was Sissy's reluctant admission.
"He'd walk the journey in 2 days. If he was footsore and couldn't walk, I sent him in the letter he got the money to ride, lest he should have none of his own to spare."
"Let us hope that tomorrow will bring something better, Rachel. Come into the air."
Her gentle hand adjusted Rachel's shawl upon her shining black hair in the usual manner of her wearing it, and they went out. The night being fine, little knots of hands were here and there lingering at street corners; but it was supper-time with the greater part of them, and there were but few people in the streets.
"You're not so hurried now, Rachel, and your hand is cooler."
"I get better, dear, if I can only walk and breathe a little fresh. Times when I can't, I turn weak and confused."
"But you must not begin to fail, Rachel, for you may be wanted at any time to stand by Stephen. Tomorrow is Saturday. If no news comes tomorrow, let us walk in the country on Sunday morning, and strengthen you for another week. Will you go?"
"Yes, dear."
They were by this time in the street where Mr. Bounderby's house stood. The way to Sissy's destination led them past the door, and they were going straight towards it. Some train had newly arrived in Coketown, which had put a number of vehicles in motion, and scattered a considerable bustle about the town. Several coaches were rattling before them and behind them as they approached Mr. Bounderby's, and one of the latter drew up with such briskness as they were in the act of passing the house, that they looked round involuntarily. The bright gaslight over Mr. Bounderby's steps showed them Mrs. Sparsit in the coach, in an ecstasy of excitement, struggling to open the door. Mrs. Sparsit, seeing them at the same moment, called them to stop.
"It's a coincidence,"
exclaimed Mrs. Sparsit, as she was released by the coachman.
"It's a providence. Come out, ma'am."
Then said Mrs. Sparsit to some one inside,
"Come out, or we'll have you dragged out."
Hereupon no other than the mysterious old woman descended, whom Mrs. Sparsit incontinently collared.
"Leave her alone, everybody,"
cried Mrs. Sparsit with great energy.
"Let nobody touch her. She belongs to me. Come in, ma'am."
Then said Mrs. Sparsit, reversing her former word of command,
"Come in, ma'am, or we'll have you dragged in."
The spectacle of a matron of classical deportment seizing an ancient woman by the throat and hauling her into a dwelling-house would have been under any circumstances sufficient temptation to all true English stragglers, so blessed as to witness it, to force a way into that dwelling-house and see the matter out. But when the phenomenon was enhanced by the notoriety and mystery by this time associated all over the town with the bank robbery, it would have lured the stragglers in with an irresistible attraction, though the roof had been expected to fall upon their heads. Accordingly, the chance witnesses on the ground, consisting of the busiest of the neighbours to the number of some 25, closed in after Sissy and Rachel, as they closed in after Mrs. Sparsit and her prize, and the whole body made a disorderly irruption into Mr. Bounderby's dining-room, where the people behind lost not a moment's time in mounting on the chairs, to get the better of the people in front.
"Fetch Mr. Bounderby down,"
cried Mrs. Sparsit.
"Rachel, young woman, you know who this is?"
"It's Mrs. Pegler,"
said Rachel.
"I should think it is,"
cried Mrs. Sparsit, exulting.
"Fetch Mr. Bounderby. Stand away, everybody."
Here old Mrs. Pegler, muffling herself up, and shrinking from observation, whispered a word of entreaty.
"Don't tell me,"
said Mrs. Sparsit aloud.
"I have told you 20 times coming along that I will not leave you till I have handed you over to him myself."
Mr. Bounderby now appeared, accompanied by Mr. Gradgrind and the whelp, with whom he had been holding conference upstairs. Mr. Bounderby looked more astonished than hospitable at sight of this uninvited party in his dining-room.
"Why, what's the matter now?"
said he.
"Mrs. Sparsit, ma'am?"
"Sir,"
explained that worthy woman,
"I trust it is my good fortune to produce a person you have much desired to find. Stimulated by my wish to relieve your mind, sir, and connecting together such imperfect clues to the part of the country in which that person might be supposed to reside, as have been afforded by the young woman, Rachel, fortunately now present to identify, I have had the happiness to succeed, and to bring that person with me, I need not say most unwillingly on her part. It has not been, sir, without some trouble that I have effected this. But trouble in your service is to me a pleasure, and hunger, thirst, and cold a real gratification."
Here Mrs. Sparsit ceased, for Mr. Bounderby's visage exhibited an extraordinary combination of all possible colours and expressions of discomfiture, as old Mrs. Pegler was disclosed to his view.
"Why, what do you mean by this?"
was his highly unexpected demand, in great warmth.
"I ask you, what do you mean by this, Mrs. Sparsit, ma'am?"
"Sir?"
exclaimed Mrs. Sparsit, faintly.
"Why don't you mind your own business, ma'am?"
roared Bounderby.
"How dare you go and poke your officious nose into my family affairs?"
This allusion to her favourite feature overpowered Mrs. Sparsit. She sat down stiffly in a chair, as if she were frozen, and with a fixed stare at Mr. Bounderby, slowly grated her mittens against one another, as if they were frozen too.
"My dear Josiah!"
cried Mrs. Pegler, trembling.
"My darling boy! I am not to blame. It's not my fault, Josiah. I told this lady over and over again that I knew she was doing what would not be agreeable to you, but she would do it."
"What did you let her bring you for? Couldn't you knock her cap off, or a tooth out, or scratch her, or do something or other to her?"
asked Bounderby.
"My own boy! She threatened me that if I resisted her I should be brought by constables, and it was better to come quietly than make that stir in such a—"
Mrs. Pegler glanced timidly but proudly round the walls.
"Such a fine house as this, indeed! Indeed it is not my fault, my dear, noble, stately boy. I have always lived quiet and secret, Josiah, my dear. I have never broken the condition once. I have never said I was your mother. I have admired you at a distance, and if I have come to town sometimes, with long times between, to take a proud peep at you, I have done it unbeknown, my love, and gone away again."
Mr. Bounderby, with his hands in his pockets, walked in impatient mortification up and down at the side of the long dining-table, while the spectators greedily took in every syllable of Mrs. Pegler's appeal, and at each succeeding syllable became more and more round-eyed. Mr. Bounderby still walking up and down when Mrs. Pegler had done, Mr. Gradgrind addressed that maligned old lady.
"I am surprised, madam,"
he observed with severity,
"that in your old age you have the face to claim Mr. Bounderby for your son, after your unnatural and inhuman treatment of him."
"Me unnatural!"
cried poor old Mrs. Pegler.
"Me inhuman! To my dear boy?"
"Dear,"
repeated Gradgrind.
"Yes, dear in his self-made prosperity, madam, I dare say. Not very dear, however, when you deserted him in his infancy, and left him to the brutality of a drunken grandmother."
"I deserted my Josiah?"
cried Mrs. Pegler, clasping her hands.
Now, Lord forgive you, sir, for your wicked imaginations, and for your scandal against the memory of my poor mother, who died in my arms before Josiah was born. May you repent of it, sir, and live to know better.
She was so very earnest and injured that Mr. Gradgrind, shocked by the possibility which dawned upon him, said in a gentler tone,
"Do you deny, then, madam, that you left your son to be brought up in the gutter?"
Josiah in the gutter?
exclaimed Mrs. Pegler.
No such thing, sir, never. For shame on you. My dear boy knows, and will give you to know, that though he come of humble parents, he come of parents that loved him as dear as the best could, and never thought it hardship on themselves to pinch a bit that he might write and cipher beautiful, and I've his books at home to show it. I have I,
said Mrs. Pegler, with indignant pride.
And my dear boy knows, and will give you to know, sir, that after his beloved father died, when he was 8 years old, his mother too could pinch a bit, as it was her duty and her pleasure and her pride to do it, to help him out in life, and put him prentice. And a steady lad he was, and a kind master he had to lend him a hand, and well he worked his own way forward to be rich and thriving. And I'll give you to know, sir, for this my dear boy won't, that though his mother kept but a little village shop, he never forgot her, but pensioned me on £30 a year, more than I want, for I put by out of it, only making the condition that I was to keep down in my own part, and make no boasts about him, and not trouble him. And I never have, except with looking at him once a year, when he has never knowed it, and it's right,"
said poor old Mrs. Pegler, in affectionate championship,
"that I should keep down in me own part, and I have no doubts that if I was here I should do a many befitting things, and I am well contented, and I can keep my pride and my Josiah to myself, and I can love for love's own sake, and I am ashamed of you, sir,"
said Mrs. Pegler, lastly,
"for your slanders and suspicions. And I never stood here before, nor never wanted to stand here when my dear son said no, and I shouldn't be here now if it hadn't been for being brought here. And for shame upon you, oh, for shame, to accuse me of being a bad mother to my son, with my son standing here to tell you so different."
The bystanders, on and off the dining-room chairs, raised a murmur of sympathy with Mrs. Pegler, and Mr. Gradgrind felt himself innocently placed in a very distressing predicament, when Mr. Bounderby, who had never ceased walking up and down, and had every moment swelled larger and larger, and grown redder and redder, stopped short.
"I don't exactly know,"
said Mr. Bounderby,
"how I came to be favoured with the attendance of the present company, but I don't inquire. When they're quite satisfied, perhaps they'll be so good as to disperse. Whether they're satisfied or not, perhaps they'll be so good as to disperse. I'm not bound to deliver a lecture on my family affairs. I have not undertaken to do it, and I'm not going to do it. Therefore, those who expect any explanation whatever upon that branch of the subject will be disappointed, particularly Tom Gradgrind, and he can't know it too soon. In reference to the bank robbery, there has been a mistake made concerning my mother. If there hadn't been over-officiousness, it wouldn't have been made, and I hate over-officiousness at all times, whether or no. Good evening."
Although Mr. Bounderby carried it off in these terms, holding the door open for the company to depart, there was a blustering sheepishness upon him, at once extremely crestfallen and superlatively absurd. Detected as the bully of humility, who had built his windy reputation upon lies, and in his boastfulness had put the honest truth as far away from him as he had advanced the mean claim, there is no meaner, to tack himself on to a pedigree, he cut a most ridiculous figure. With the people filing off at the door he held, who he knew would carry what had passed to the whole town, to be given to the four winds, he could not have looked a bully more shorn and forlorn if he had had his ears cropped. Even that unlucky female, Mrs. Sparsit, fallen from her pinnacle of exaltation into the slough of despond, was not in so bad a plight as that remarkable man and self-made humbug, Josiah Bounderby of Coketown. Rachel and Sissy, leaving Mrs. Pegler to occupy a bed at her son's for that night, walked together to the gate of Stone Lodge, and there parted. Mr. Gradgrind joined them before they had gone very far, and spoke with much interest of Stephen Blackpool, for whom he thought this signal failure of the suspicions against Mrs. Pegler was likely to work well. As to the whelp, throughout this scene, as on all other late occasions, he had stuck close to Bounderby. He seemed to feel that as long as Bounderby could make no discovery without his knowledge, he was so far safe. He never visited his sister, and had only seen her once since she went home, that is to say, on the night when he still stuck close to Bounderby, as already related. There was one dim, unformed fear lingering about his sister's mind, to which she never gave utterance, which surrounded the graceless and ungrateful boy with a dreadful mystery. The same dark possibility had presented itself in the same shapeless guise this very day to Sissy, when Rachel spoke of some one who would be confounded by Stephen's return, having put him out of the way. Louisa had never spoken of harbouring any suspicion of her brother in connection with the robbery. She and Sissy had held no confidence on the subject, save in that one interchange of looks, when the unconscious father rested his grey head on his hand, but it was understood between them, and they both knew it. This other fear was so awful that it hovered about each of them like a ghostly shadow, neither daring to think of its being near herself, far less of its being near the other. And still the forced spirit which the whelp had plucked up throve with him. If Stephen Blackpool was not the thief, let him show himself. Why didn't he? Another night, another day and night. No Stephen Blackpool. Where was the man? And why did he not come back? End of chapter 5.